Hi, everybody. Zach Almy here. Got an interesting article I wanted to touch base on today. And it actually is an article about Merriam-Webster's Word of the Year for 2023. And I don't know if you had a chance to see this in the news or not, but the Word of the Year for Merriam-Webster's dictionary for 2023 is the word authentic. So that means that this word has been looked up an awful lot over the course of the last year. And it's kind of interesting that in the age where we're being inundated with AI, which is artificial intelligence, people seem to be looking for something that is authentic and even trying to figure out what authentic is. In fact, the editor at large for Merriam-Webster, Peter Sokolowski, says that we see in 2023 a kind of crisis of authenticity. So let's take a look at the word authentic. It's an adjective, and it means worthy of acceptance or belief as conforming to or based on a fact. Now, if you've been paying attention to definitions over the past few years, you realize that this becomes pretty vague when we know that reality, beliefs, facts are something that are subject to change kind of at whim. Whatever you choose to believe is true, regardless of whether it makes any sense at all. Another definition, conforming to an original so as to reproduce essential features. And I think this is actually kind of a key one, is that something that is original, something that is authentic, has merit. It has some value. And so it's something that anything is going to be judged against. So when we look at artificial intelligence, for instance, it's going to be measured against authentic intelligence. And what we see is that whenever we take and we try to improve on what is authentic, what is God ordained, God designed, God created, our track record hasn't been too good. It's been kind of poor. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a minute. It says not false or imitated, real or actual. Again, that's something where that's become more of a subjective thing as opposed to an objective thing like truth used to be. True to one's own personality, spirit, or character. It talks in here about your authentic self. And again, this is where we can get misled, because our authentic self is who we really are, not who we feel like we are at the moment, that's subject to any kind of change in the weather or in whatever else goes on. So authentic is something that people are trying to find because we have been inundated with artificial. So let's take a look at artificial. And the definition there says humanly contrived, often on a natural model. So man-made. That means that we're trying to duplicate what God has created and do it ourselves. Having existence in legal, economic, or political theory, lacking in a natural or spontaneous quality. And how about this? Imitation or sham. Imitation or sham. So I want to take and bring this into the context of another article that I came across. And this one came out just on the 29th of November. Denver Health administers first shots of Ebola vaccines. So that means that on the 29th, the lucky healthcare professionals, because they're the first line of defense, they're the first ones to get these jabs, started getting the Ebola jab. The Ebola jab was actually passed by the FDA in 2019, so we know the kind of merit that it deserves by being passed by the FDA and approved for that. But here's where it gets interesting, is we take a look at this, is that, we're doing this Ebola jab. Why? Well, because we've got this disease X that's coming down the road, and the previous one apparently wasn't deadly enough to scare people enough to surrender all of our rights and all of our abilities to make our own decisions. So they've got to come up with something worse. And so we know that Ebola has a much higher virility to it. It actually causes more deaths per infection rate than the coronaviruses do. In fact, it says in here that 70 to 90% when it's not treated end up dying. If you look at the numbers, it's closer to 25% of the actual verified cases. Now, here's where it gets kind of interesting, is that we look at authentic versus artificial. And what does the Ebola vaccine do? It's there to try to create an artificial immunity. So anytime we're exposed to something artificially, it creates a different response than what happens naturally. While we were told during 2020, 2021, 2022 that natural immunity didn't exist, it has come out once again as being the only kind of immunity that really does exist. and that as we try to create an artificial immunity, artificially induced immunity by injecting something into somebody or giving it to them in some unnatural way, we find that it not only doesn't work, it causes more problems. We can't improve on what God has created, and every time we try, it gets worse. So I pulled up the information. This actually comes from the insert in the Ebola jab, and it basically says in here that it hasn't been shown to be effective in preventing getting Ebola or transmitting Ebola. That sounds kind of familiar to a previous jab that we've just gone through. It says anaphylaxis has been associated following the administration of it, so make sure you got your EpiPen on there. And then it does say that the RNA from the jab actually can stay in your body fluids, and so it says it can be detected in your blood, saliva, urine, other body fluids, including semen, which means that it can be shed. That means that when one person gets jabbed, that there's a likelihood that other people are going to get exposed to that same, what they call attenuated virus, which means that the virus is still alive. It's just been weakened to the point where it's not going to be as mean and nasty as they hoped it would. Now, here's where it really is interesting, is that in 2019, when we started hearing all these fears about this novel coronavirus coming out, I started doing some research, and I noticed that it was patented. And understanding the nature of patents, patents are for something that you create or you invent. So I started doing some research. In fact, I dug up some more information today. It says that in June of 2013, the United States Patent and Trademark Office ruled that naturally occurring genes are not patentable. The ruling claims that even when isolated the naturally occurring genes are not patentable because they are a product of nature. So anything that is a product of nature, you can't patent. It goes on to say, nevertheless, synthesized versions of such genes are subject to patent protection. So that means that if Ebola virus has a patent, and it does, in fact, here's the U.S. patent application thing, and the numbers on there. You can probably look at that and see what the numbers are. If not, you can go to one of your search engines and type in Ebola patent, and you'll be able to see that come up on there, that it has been applied for. That means that it has to be something where they've synthesized something genetically from it so that they can obtain the patent. So going further in this article, and this is an article that you can find on IPS Legal Group, and this is a legal group that actually takes and helps people get patents for their products so they can protect their intellectual product and everything else that goes on with that. So anyway, it goes on. The question is asked, why would anybody want to patent a virus? The short answer is to have control. When granted a patent, an inventor holds the rights to the invention. These exclusive rights allow an inventor to profit from the discovery of the invention financially. Critics of those who patent viruses argue that companies and researchers who hold these patents are essentially benefiting from people's suffering. These opponents are referring to companies who conduct research, create a vaccine, and then retain the profits for themselves. It's a good thing that the CDC, our government, the FDA, the medical associations, it's a good thing that they're way too altruistic to engage in this kind of behavior. We know that they would never conduct research, create a vaccine, and retain the profits for themselves. That just doesn't sound ethical at all. So anyway, with that, it comes back to this point, is that there's going to be these patented viruses that we continue to be exposed to, even if not physically, at least through fear-mongering that's going to come at us from every direction, every form of media. And I'm here to remind you that authentic is always better than artificial. The God-breathed immune system that you have inside of you that can create natural immunity is always going to be superior to an artificially acquired or attempted to acquire immunity. So with that said, take care of yourself, avoid the fear-mongering that's going on, focus on what's pure and positive and good, noble, true, and worthy of praise. Fix your mind on those things and enjoy good health. Till next time, this is Zach Almy. Make today a great one.